Welcome back, Deep Review TV viewers. It's Chris Nichols here.
And it's Jordan Drake here with an OM-1.
Ooh, and as you can see, we're side by side. I really like these back and forth exchanges that we have, right? So today we're going to be talking about this OM-1. It's OM Systems' first, camera of their own, right? And so we thought we would talk about, they have an opportunity to kind of change things and go in a different direction, don't they?
Yeah, we've been talking about cameras for over a decade now. We got some wisdom to impart. So OM System, here's some advice that we think you should heed.
So frankly, the OM-1 really does feel more like an evolution of what Olympus was already doing with their cameras and not really a revolution. And the 20 megapixel sensor on this camera may be good, but I do feel they missed a bit on megapixels. I feel like they should have more.
Yeah, I mean, we want more resolution, but should they focus on creating a higher resolution sensor, or should they just get faster and faster sensors until we get something like their really great handheld high-res mode, which works with static subjects, make it so it reads out fast enough you could use that for moving subjects?
Totally, and actually I think the answer would be both. They need to do both, because we've been at 20 megapixels for like 7 or 8 years now, and I think there's just a perception in people's minds that Micro Four Thirds can't get past that barrier. And whoever does it first, Olympus or Panasonic, I think that's gonna actually really change people's mindset. So I'm the first one to say you don't necessarily need more megapixels, but in this regard, because it's been so long, I think it's just gonna be perceptually a big deal in the market to have the first higher res sensor than 20 megapixels.
All right, so there's two companies playing in the Micro Four Thirds hybrids. It's really Panasonic and now OM Systems. And I would like OM to reach out to Panasonic and become better friends with them so that all of their lens functionality would work cross-platform. That was a big part of the appeal of Micro Four Thirds in the first place.
Because the fact of the matter is they still don't play nice together, right?
Yeah, they did at the start, but then we started to see, things like Panasonic put stepless aperture rings into some of their lenses, which don't work on the Olympus bodies. But most importantly, they've got these great systems where the lens stabilization works with the IBIS. It's incredibly effective on both platforms, but you can't juggle them back and forth. And I think
Panasonic IS doesn't work with Olympus IBIS, and Olympus IS doesn't work with Panasonic IBIS.
Yeah, and I understand why they're trying to be protective, but you'll sell a hell of a lot more lenses if they work on both systems. Just learn to play nice, people.
Yeah. Now, the OM-1 did upgrade two things that I think are very important going to the future for OM Systems. That is, they have a faster reading sensor, and they do now have a better TruePic engine, better processing power. Might not seem very glamorous, but it's so important when you want to get into computational photography. But have they gone far enough?
No, I don't think that they have yet. Like, yes, this scans twice as fast as the older sensor.
Pretty low bar, though.
We're seeing like full-frame stacked sensors that read out twice as fast as this, and they're 4 times the size of the Micro Four Thirds sensor.
Yeah, I think if they can pull off this innovation of making a Micro Four Thirds camera shoot a lot like a smartphone shoots, where a smartphone with a small sensor can punch well above its weight, that would completely change the game. I mean, people complain about the fact that Micro Four Thirds can't get shallower depth of field to compete with the larger sensors, but if you can do fake digital bokeh like phones do, well, that alleviates that issue. Not enough megapixels? If you can start stitching and compiling multiple photos together for higher resolution, alleviates that issue. Low light performance. I mean, all the things that we take now for granted on a smartphone as being beneficial, if that came to Micro Four Thirds, it would be far more competitive in a lot of people's eyes.
Yeah, and we're already seeing some of that with the handheld high-res mode on these cameras, but it's not invisible. You have to choose to go over and select that option in the menu. I want it to be like a smartphone where I push the shutter, it immediately captures like 16 images, stacks them together, does all the magic, and just gives me one really beautiful JPEG or even RAW file at the end of the day, instead of having to constantly, which option can I use?
Totally. I think people who are coming from a smartphone would really appreciate the way that works, and maybe people who are already established photographers would appreciate it. No, they won't appreciate it, but they'll complain, but I think that's the way they gotta go.
Yeah. One area OM Systems has said they really want to focus on is video with their cameras, and we're already starting to see that with the OM-1, but I'd like to see that extend to the lenses as well.
Okay, but Jordan, you're gonna have to explain this a little bit further for me, because I shoot video on the Olympus EM1 Mark III. I use the 12 to 100. I mean, at least a lot of the lenses have manual focus clutches. I like that. And the 8 to 25 doesn't breathe, really.
No, they make some lenses that are totally suitable for video work. But I think Panasonic kind of went one way and made like some cinema zoom kind of ideas with their f1.7, very premium, things like that, very short zoom range on them. I'd like to see Olympus go the other way and kind of replace what we're seeing on like high-end camcorders, you know, like a big zoom with maybe a slower aperture on that, like the 12-100, they could just rehouse that, put a longer focus throw on it, make it a stepless aperture, maybe with actually an iris ring on it, and even like a power zoom. I think that would be a really interesting hole in the market that's really not getting filled right now. And I think OM Systems would have a really good opportunity to do that.
And then if Panasonic and Olympus play nice together with the lens designs like we talk about,
Then it's a perfect world.
yeah, there you go, either way. Now the OM-1 actually did some good things when it came to autofocus. Performance is improved and it's a little bit more reliable, but my advice to OM Systems would be to change the interface and make this even more usable.
In the last few years, we've really seen 3D tracking just become like the default autofocus system. You know, all these companies have different names for it, 3D tracking, real-time tracking. The idea is the same, is just put a box on your subject and the camera will keep following them as they move across the frame. And there is a tracking mode on the OM-1. It just happens, if you don't couple it with any object detection, it is the least reliable autofocus in the camera.
I mean, that was kind of the thing. Anytime we picked up an Olympus camera in the past, we're like, oh, tracking? Never touch it. Don't even think about it. So nice that it now works, but you're right. You have to couple it with subject detection, which means you have to choose a specific subject detection mode. It's not the end of the world, but you got to go into a menu, pick it. I don't know why human detection isn't in there. Your face and eye is completely separate, so that's another problem with the interface. And really, the solution is we've got to make it simple. Why can't they do it the way Nikon does, where the deep learning techniques are automatically chosen based on what it looks at?
Yeah, it just automatically chooses the subject, analyzes what it thinks you're focusing on. It might get it wrong, and there it's nice to have those overrides where you can manually select them. But yeah, at least make it try, because if I was out shooting motorsports and then my kid does something cute, I'm screwed.
Yeah, so that's our advice. Change the interface, and if you're not going to use subject detection, you need to just have a better general purpose tracking.
Yeah. Okay, so just off the top of our heads, those are a few things that we would recommend that OM looks at when they're designing their next camera and their next lenses.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very interesting start for a new line of cameras, but honestly, the OM-1, although it's a great camera, I think is still a conservative camera, and so they've got big opportunities to really shake things up, and that's where I think we need to see them go. And as always, we really appreciate you guys joining us today. Do like and subscribe to the channel. Jordan and I would really appreciate that, and check out deepreview.com. Always fantastic articles. Thanks so much. We'll see you soon.